Hello, everybody, and welcome to this circuit webinar series. Today is our second workshop where we're going to be talking about circular economy sustainability screening. My name is Daniela Pigoso. I'm an associate professor at the Technical University of Denmark, and I've been one of the co-leads in the CIRCit project over the last 3.5 years. Today, I'll be playing a facilitator role, so I'm going to start by providing you an overall introduction to the project and to the speech that we have today, and then I'm going to facilitate the discussions and the questions that you might have. A little bit about CIRCit before we dive into the presentation. It is a Nordic project that has the goal of supporting the Nordic industry in making the transition to a circular economy. Over the project duration, we have engaged more than 70 different companies and organizations that work very close to us to co-develop a number of different tools and also to validate the tools that we have developed. It has been focused on 6 main areas, and we're going to have a workshop for each one of those areas in the next few days. Today, we focus on first area that has to do with sustainability screening within a circular economy context. Our main goal is to explain why is that important to look into sustainability when evaluating circular economy initiatives so that it can support the decision-making process. Questions such as, is it better to design for recycling or to use renewable materials? Or is that better to set up a service-based business model or keep a sales-based one? All of these questions can be answered from a sustainability point of view on the basis of the work that we have been doing in CIRCit. And it's my pleasure today to bring up Mariia Kravchenko, which has been the main researcher behind the work on sustainability screening for circular economy. Mariia is a PhD researcher here at the Technical University of Denmark, and she's been working with sustainability for many years through her academic and professional career as well. So without taking any longer in the introduction, I'd like to welcome you, Mariia, for coming today, and we are all very much looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Daniela has presented CIRCit project and its overview of focus areas, where I'll dive in the area of sustainability screening of circular economy. To provide an overview of sustainability screening for circular economy in a nutshell, I'll answer 5 main questions of how-to of sustainability screening. First and second would be about what it is, when it is, when to use it, when it's beneficial to use it, why it is important, whom to engage during the process, and how it's done. And I'll address these questions one by one. So circular economy sustainability screening is a method that helps assessing a potential sustainability implications of a proposed circular economy concept or initiative by screening its potential performance within areas of environment, economy, and society. In essence, we aimed at helping answering the question of, is circular more sustainable? Is circular solution is circular solution more likely to bring benefits within environmental, economic, and social domains of sustainability? When to use it? Well, in order to use sustainability screening, it is advisable that there is some body behind a circular economy initiative or a concept. What I mean is that there should be some details about what it should entail, what kind of circular economy strategies it covers, what kind of business processes that are likely to be engaged in the development of a circular economy concept. Why? It's because at these stages, there are already some details that would be useful to apply through the screening. However, there is still time to introduce changes if needed. So you may wonder how one designs a circular economy concept. And for that, we have other focus areas that could help with it. Another question, which I think one of the most important here, is why screening is important. And when looking at circular economy nowadays, it is without a question that it could become a very robust means towards achieving sustainability benefits. Meaning that by looking at what circular economy can offer, we can potentially preserve the value of resources for longer in the system. However, there are also exceptions, as with any other sustainability-related strategies or initiatives. Let me give you a few examples. Here is a repair maintenance strategy, for instance, which could be about adding on a repair service for a product that is already in the market. So here, while repair indeed contributes to resource preservation by not producing any new product, what about other implications, such as what is the performance of such a repaired product after it has been repaired? For instance, what is the energy demand of such a repaired product or other resource demand? Is it safe to use? Another example could be in the area of alternative materials. Well, with this sort of love and hate relationship with fossil-based materials, it is quite obvious that thinking is moving towards introducing recycled materials or bio-based materials. While here we talk about the origin, for instance, or the type of materials, what about other considerations such as material origin? Where does it come from? Its renewability, its toxicity, its possible or likely end of life story. So all these things should be considered for sustainability screening, and the tools behind the process proposed here in this focus area are aiming to help define those areas and quantitatively understand the performance of these areas. It brings us to answering the fourth question of whom to engage during the process. Well, and the answer here, it depends. In this example of repair I have given, because I know the context now of what I've just told you, it is likely that we bring people from maintenance service, from after sales service, from sales department to contribute with their knowledge. Possibly there also be product developers engaged because they're the ones who develop the product and know it. In the example of bio-based materials, it also depends on the context. If those materials are to be integrated into a more complex product, then we need expertise of product designers who have technical knowledge about products. We need expertise of salespeople or marketing people about the economic sides of those products and materials. And of course, last and not least, knowledge provided by sustainability manager or engineer to actually facilitate this holistic consideration of a triple bottom line, also including the social one. Yeah, last and not least, how actually it is done. So the approach here follows a step-by-step thinking where there are key steps and sub-steps that help performing sustainability screening of a circular economy concept or initiative. By doing these steps, it becomes clear what exactly circular economy initiative is trying to contribute to, basically providing a framework for a next step, for instance, step 2, when understanding what sustainability areas or what sustainability aspects are more likely to be affected by this concept, and what are the suitable indicators to calculate to understand the performance on those aspects. The next step, step 3, it's all about indicator application, because that's only when um, we understand the true performance there. The step 3 supports in understanding what data is needed, how to set up a collection plan, how to calculate those indicators, and of course, how to use results to support decisions. By covering these 5 questions, I hope I've given you some clarity. But of course, I would also like to show how it's done in practice. And for that, I will switch to an online mode with that main page that contains all the tools we have been working so far. Here, I'm on CIRCit webpage, and when I go under circularity focus areas, I immediately land onto an overview of all 6. And obviously today we talk about sustainability screening here. Once I open it up, it basically briefly describes what I've just been telling about the particularities of the process and the whole logic behind it, and leads you to have access through this active link to a workbook or browsing online here. So once you click on it, there is a workbook here available to you, which again provides all the questions, answers to the questions that I've addressed today, and the explanations and guidance on how to perform those steps. Furthermore, if you go um, at the bottom, you see the tools that belong to these focus areas. While the circular economy scanner is a common tool for all of the focus areas, what is particular to the focus area of sustainability screening is its own tool, which is a very comprehensive digital database. So once you click on the page, it uncovers the process that I've shown you, explains the tool, explains the steps, and then it has also an active link to that digital workbook that is saved as an Excel file. I'll not click on it now because it's pretty heavy file, but once you click on it, it prompts download of a file which is stored at DTU's data store, so it's safe to download. But I have it open in my Excel, and this is the way it looks. At least this is the way it welcomes you in the introduction. The way it's built is to follow that logic we have inbuilt in the step-by-step approach, meaning that all these worksheets underneath, they all correspond to those key steps or sub-steps needed to perform sustainability screening. For instance, step 1 corresponds to step 1 I have referred before. So the way it needs to be done for achieving good results is following the workbook. Here, for instance, as I said, there is guidance on how to perform the steps, and then referring to this Excel file and worksheets for a more interactive and practical way of registering things and then selecting indicators. What is important about this database or workbook, digital workbook, is that it contains indicator database with around 300 sustainability related performance indicators. They're all there. They're all important for sustainability screening, but the logic behind selecting the indicators for a particular circular economy initiative is explained exactly in that workbook. So the advice is to use them along each other. What I also would like to highlight is that you may wonder or you may not have quite large experience in working with sustainability or sustainability related, integrating sustainability into projects. So here, there are also a few worksheets that provide the overview of, for instance, sustainability aspects that we have used to classify indicators. which basically means that it gives you a very good overview of what they are. And I must tell you, there are around 25, which isn't really little. So they give you an overview how complex working with sustainability might be, but also how those aspects are linked to each other. Yeah, so this is a very short overview of the logic of making sustainability screening for circular economy, as well as main corresponding tools to perform the screening, such as this Excel database, which again contains descriptions or interactive panels to perform all the steps. And then, of course, this workbook that can be used by a team of experts to perform sustainability screening. I think that was it from my side. So I'm returning to the to the shared discussion here. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the very nice presentation, Maria. We do have already some questions to you, and I'd like also to invite everybody to add questions to the box in case you have them. So I'd like to start with the first one, Maria, and it has to do with the use of the toolbox and the workbook that you have developed. If we work in a small company that maybe don't have a sustainability or an environmental manager, who is the right person to take it over and facilitate the process?
Yeah. Thank you. And this is actually a very relevant question because, at least in the European settings, many of the companies belong to the small and medium sector enterprises. So I would say that it is advisable to have a person that has could become a sustainability ambassador in the company, for instance, or in the team. As my experience shows, it can be a product designer. Quite often, those people they already have a very good knowledge of like the technical side of their product, but also the sort of related environmental side or economic side. And especially in small and medium enterprises, people who, for instance, develop products, they're also part of, for instance, senior boards, or they are um, they are co-owners or owners of the company. So it means that they have a very good overview of their processes inside, and they can become sort of these ambassadors of making the screening, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones that do all the job, because the data needs to be collected from somebody else sometimes, or quite often. So it
Mhm.
just means that there needs to be a sort of a sustainability ambassador or steward to lead the process and engage relevant people. And then data collection is another process that involves other people. I would say anybody who is interested in sustainability, including business developers, product designers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Perfect. It makes sense. And the other questions that we have quite many actually connected to the database of indicators
Yeah.
that you just mentioned. The first one is you said that there are 300 different indicators, and that sounds as a lot. Should we use all of them, or how many indicators should we go for? I mean, when to know when enough is enough?
Yeah, that's great. Indeed, it can be overwhelming to actually get knowing that there are so many indicators that are potentially all very relevant. But my advice would be to perform to have the step-by-step approach, and by making step number one completed, you sort of frame your question for indicator selection, which means that you shouldn't really jump onto indicator selection unless you really understand what is behind your circular economy concept.
Mhm.
When enough is enough was another sub question of this question, which is also answered in the workbook book we have developed, and that is available on the web page, which provides basically guidance on how to select relevant indicators, but also how do we know when to stop? So it provides sort of a rough estimation of how many indicators should be there for some circular economy concepts. So it is all described and written in the workbook, and that's why I advise you to do it step by step, but also to do it iteratively. So it's not just a linear, ooh, it is also a way of reflecting upon why things should be as they were sort of imagined to be, or should they be redesigned instead of just being as proposed in the first place. So it's a very much iterative process, a learning process of understanding what's behind the circular economy proposal and its relation to sustainability.
Okay. Yeah. And the other question that I guess is connected to that as well is what is the relation between the performance indicators that you have in the database and life cycle assessment indicators or LCA indicators?
Yeah, so this is a question that I'm always asked, or we are asked in the team. And the main difference here is that our indicators are very useful in those initial stages of design when there are some details available, but uh, there are some details available, uh, and those indicators, of course, require some extra effort in terms of investigating what data, where data is, what data is needed. But it's more like in front or input indicators that could help design proceed with a more informed, sort of um, background, while LCA, it is more about assessing the impact, which we all know life cycle assessment or life cycle sustainability impact. So it is more looking at what the impacts are of our previous actions. And there, while it can give a good overview of the impact, there is nothing much to be done in terms of changing it because the actions have been done. So our indicators, or leading indicators, the way we call them, they support people who are to make decisions during design, for instance, product developers or business model developers, because they understand those indicators and they can, by looking at the results of those indicators, they can introduce changes immediately in the design stage.
And then we can always complement them with life cycle assessment indicators.
Exactly. Yes, and when browsing the workbook, you could also see the stages of application, and there, of course, um, when moving in time, then impact assessments are really useful tools to have as well.
Yeah, if we continue talking about the indicators, we have a couple of questions asking what's the connection between the sustainability indicators and circularity indicators? And then we have here an example of the circularities indicator by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Are there any
Yeah,
there?
yes. This is also a question that we get asked a lot, and it's because we have basically merged circular economy and sustainability together. But there is a big difference between indicators that we operate with, and that's why we do not call them circular economy indicators, but we call them sustainability indicators or sustainability related indicators. It's because they help to see, or they help measuring aspects in economic, environmental, and social domains. And they can be used regardless of a project type, for instance, whether it's a circular project or linear project. While circularity indicators, they often are composite indicators that consist of several smaller indicators or variables, which were specifically designed to measure circularity, which sometimes only takes into account, for instance, material side, but not the rest, like not the energy side, not the social side. So there's
Mhm.
quite a big difference between the indicators we use and the indicators that are proposed often in circular economy literature or um, consultancies. But I would also say that it may be beneficial to employ both to see if there is a balance between increasing circularity and increasing sustainability.
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess that the last question that you have in connection to the database, then we have many others, but this one is, do you keep the database up to date? There might be coming new indicators, how to ensure that all of them are there in the database.
Yeah, that's great. I guess we have already like reached the pain threshold when 300 is already painful, but I guess it allows us to update without losing the integrity of all the other components of the database. So if we are to update it, it will be updated, and the link that is already distributed in public will be valid or will stay the same. So whenever
Mhm.
somebody comes into the link, there is an updated version of that database. But I would also like to highlight that um, it contains indicators and overview of what data is needed, how to interpret them, how to calculate them, but there is no real data. So for instance, if we are to know how much energy is needed to produce 1 kilogram of a specific plastic, then this isn't the database to look at because there are other databases to retrieve this information. So I believe that it is a strength that it doesn't really contain any data that can become obsolete in 1 year because those indicators they have been used and will be used for longer time, the ones that we have in our database.
Yeah, and I guess that the next couple
Yeah.
of questions, they have to do with examples. Would it maybe be possible to show a short example on how you apply the circular economy sustainability screening process? How can that be used in practice?
Yeah. So I'm sure that once I start showing, it will not be short. But referring to those examples, let us take bio-based materials. So a very big misconception is that bio-based is sort of like a closed loop material. So it comes from bio and goes to bio safely. But once you sort of have this frame and you start going into the Excel tool, for instance, and you can select a circular economy strategy that is called raw materials, then you realize what are the sustainability areas that are relevant for this particular strategy also require looking into, for instance, but what about end of life destiny of that material? And quite often, once this question is there, a user may think, I should indeed investigate the end of life opportunity of this material, which means that some bio-based plastic, even though it is bio-based, cannot be biodegraded, which also means that it really depends on whether there is a strategy of a company to aim for both bio-based and biodegradable or only for bio-based. Again, returning to bio-based, this Excel file could point out at another aspect called energy or origin, like sourcing. Maybe it requires us to investigate where does this bio-based material come from, and it could lead us to understand that maybe it comes from a source that is also a source of food for some other communities. So by really having this just one example of bio-based materials to be used in a product, and then applying this scope, let's say, in the Excel filters, let's say, like the Excel language, then you could really see what areas are likely to sort of that the areas that are proposed for you to be investigated, what is in there, and then once you realize that, indeed, this area needs to be investigated more, you see what is the corresponding indicator for that. So I hope it gave more clarity, but as I suggested, step by step is preferred because then you realize and you do this, I haven't really thought of that, or it makes sense. Yeah,
And I would say maybe just to add to that, Maria, that I would really recommend you to have a look at the workbook. In the last chapter, it's a full example on how to follow the process when looking into all the way to
yeah,
collecting the indicators, to evaluating the data, and then to taking decisions afterwards.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Thank you. Exactly. In this workbook, there is a very practical example of a product and a company and the logic they've been following when applying the tools. So please refer to that.
Mhm. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Maria. I'm afraid we don't have more time
You
for
do.
questions. We still have some questions that we didn't manage to answer, but we will contact you with the answers for those questions directly. And before saying goodbye, I just have a few announcements to make to you. The first one is that there's actually a great opportunity to get support from Maria to running the sustainability screening process. There are some positions open for companies or individuals that would like to try it out and then provide feedback to the research. I'm gonna add in the chat box in a second the link for your pre-registration for this tryout, and then you are welcome to register to that. The second announcement I want to make is that in September, we're going to have a hands-on workshop here in Copenhagen where you'll be able to try out not only the sustainability screening, but all the different tools that we have been developing in the CIRCit project. If you have the interest to join, please just go to our website. I will also add the link in a second in the chat where you can pre-register for this workshop. And well, that was all for today. I really hope to see you on Monday when we're going to have our third webinar. And this one will be focused on circular economy business modeling. Marina Pieroni is coming to present to us a very detailed and systematic step-by-step approach that help companies to identify business opportunities from a circular economy point of view and then to develop business models that can ensure a higher circularity in those companies. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. And have a nice weekend and see you on Monday at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Bye bye.